Saint Protus, Saint Hyacinth, Martyrs, 262, Salarian way Rome. Saint Protus and Saint Hyacinth, whose victory the Church commemorates on this day, are honored among the most illustrious martyrs that ennobled Rome with their blood, when the emperors of the world attempted, with the whole weight of their power, to crush the little flock of Christ. Their epitaph, among the works of Pope Damasus, calls them brothers, and informs us that Hyacinthus sustained the first conflict, but that Protus obtained his crown before him. They are said, in the Acts of Saint Eugenia, to have been eunuchs and retainers to that virtuous lady and martyr, who is honored on the 25th of December. Their martyrdom, and that of Eugenia, is placed in these Acts under Valerian, in 257, but the Liberian calendar assures us that Saint Basila, who seems to have been a companion of Saint Eugenia, received her crown on the 22nd of September, in the persecution of Diocletian, in 304, and was buried on the Salarian way. Saint Avitus, of Vienna, about the year 500, Fortunatus, and others, make mention of Saint Eugenia among the most celebrated virgins and martyrs. The ancient calendar, drawn up in the pontificate of Liberius, mentions the festival of Saints Protus and Hyacinthus on the 11th of September, as celebrated at their tomb on the old Salarian way, in the cemetery of Basila, who lay buried at some distance. Her name ought rather to be written Basila, as it is in the Liberian calendar, for it is derived from Bassus. This cemetery was afterwards comprised under that of Saint Priscilla, who was buried not far off on the new Salarian way. Saints Protus and Hyacinthus are honored in the sacramentary of Saint Gregory, in the ancient Martyrology, published by Father Fronto, and in those of Bede, Usuard, Van Delbert. Pope Damasus, in 366, removed the earth which hid the tomb of these two martyrs from the view of the faithful. And, during his pontificate, a priest named Theodorus built over it a church, as appears from an ancient epitaph, published by Baronius. Anastasius relates that Pope Symmachus afterwards adorned it with plates and vessels of silver. Pope Clement VIII, in 1592, caused the sacred remains of Saints Protus and Hyacinthus to be removed from this church into the city, and to be deposited in the church of Saint John Baptist, belonging to the Florentines, of which translation and account is given us by Sarazanius, an eyewitness, in his notes on the poems of Pope Damasus. A considerable part of their relics was given to the Benedictine Abbey at Mullenheim, now called Seligenstadt. Amen. What words can we find sufficiently to extol the heroic virtue and invincible fortitude of the martyrs? They stood out against the fury of those tyrants whose arms had subdued the most distant nations, to whose yoke almost the whole known world was subject, and whose power both kings and people revered. They, standing alone, without any preparation of war, appeared undaunted in the presence of those proud conquerors, who seemed to think that the very earth ought to bend under their feet. Armed with virtue and divine grace, they were an overmatch for all the powers of the world and hell. They fought with wild beasts, fires, and swords. With intrepidity and wonderful cheerfulness they braved the most cruel torments, and by humility, patience, meanness, and constancy, baffled all enemies, and triumphed over men and devils. How glorious was the victory of such an invincible virtue! Having before our eyes the examples of so many holy saints, are we yet so dastardly as to shrink under temptations, or to lose patience under the most ordinary trials? Oremus. Grant, O Lord, that the precious confession of thy blessed martyrs, Protus and Hyacinth, may nourish our faith, and that their loving intercession may continually protect us. Per Dominum nostrum Iesum Christum filium tuum, qui tecum vivit et regnat, in unitate Spiritus Sanctae Deus, per omnia saecula saecularum. Amen. Benedicat vos omnipotens Deus, Pater, et Filius, et Spiritus Sanctus. Alban,